Hi guys! We're going to make hearts today. Super cute. These are two I just made about 20 minutes ago. As you can see, they do not look the same. No heart you make is going to look exactly the same, and your hearts may not look exactly like mine, but it is okay. Everybody crochets differently. It depends how loose or tight the yarn is. It does not matter. So for this, you will need yarn, obviously. Scissors to cut our yarn at the end, a crochet hook, and a crochet needle, but we're going to use that at the end. To start, you want to take your yarn and make a slip knot. I kind of make slip knots in a funny way. I loop my yarn over like that. And then I take the working end of my yarn and I place it over the yarn like this. Then I take my hook and I drag it under the loop to grab this yarn. Once I grabbed it, I can tighten my working end of my yarn and my non-working end. And that creates a slip knot that you use for everything you crochet with. Anything you're going to crochet starts with this slip knot. Scarves, blankets, anything. So do not confuse your working end with your non-working end. You don't want to crochet this into your heart. Only the working end. We're going to start by making a chain, which is fairly simple. The yarn goes over the hook, and then the loop goes over the yarn you just put on your hook. And that makes one chain. So we'll do that again. Yarn over hook, chain number 2, yarn over hook, chain number 3, yarn over hook, chain number 4, and finally chain number 5. And I don't hold the crochet hook in the conventional way. There's a certain way you hold the yarn in the hook. I'm not that advanced in crochet yet, I have to admit. So I just do whatever way is comfortable. You can hold it any way you like, whatever works for you. It does not matter, whatever is comfortable with you. So as you can see, we have our chain of 5. So you'll have 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mine gets smaller up to the top. I tend to crochet kind of tightly. It does not matter if they're loose or tight. It'll all work out in the end. Next, you want to take the first chain you created and stick your yarn through it, because we're going to connect them to make a circle. So once you have your last stitch on your hook, you want to put your yarn over the hook and take these 2 loops and put them over the yarn on your hook. As you can see, I messed that up a little bit, but the beauty of crochet is when you make a mistake, it is really easy to fix it. So I'm going to go back. I have my yarn, and I'm going to go back into that first stitch. And I'm going to loop my yarn over my hook, and then take these two loops and bring them over the yarn I just put on my hook. And voila. We have connected our chain into a circle. This circle is really important because it is the heart we make around this circle. So now, make sure you can find the center of your circle. That's really important. And then we're going to chain 3. So take your yarn, make sure it's not the non-working end, loop it over your hook, and then loop the yarn over. That's one chain. Yarn over hook, loop again, yarn over hook one more time, and loop again. And there's our chain of 1, 2, 3 stitches. Now, we're going to do 10 double crochets into the center of our circle. Sounds hard, really isn't. I'm going to walk you through it. Take your yarn, loop it over your hook, find the center of your circle, and push the hook into the center of the circle. So you should have 1, 2, 3 loops on your hook. Take your yarn, loop it over your hook again, and take the first 2 loops you have and bring it over your hook and over that yarn you just put on your hook. So now you'll have 2 loops. And then yarn over hook again and do the same thing. Take the 2 loops you have and bring them over that yarn on your hook. And you just did your first double crochet. Sometimes the circle can get lost. Just find it. And then do 9 more of these into the center of your circle. So again, yarn over hook, push your hook into the center of the circle. You should have 3 loops. Yarn over hook again. Take the first 2 loops and pull them over that yarn you put on your hook. And again, yarn over hook and take the last 2 loops and bring them over that yarn. Perfect. And then just keep doing this. I might fast forward this part. You guys can pause it. Up to you. But just 8 more. You guys got it. Okay, so I actually went off camera for that just because it was a little easier. But we're back. And we have this really cute little wreath. If you lost count, that's okay. I'm going to show you a trick. You can actually count how many double crochets you did. It's a little hard to see, but there are 2, see the 2 lines of yarn here? That's a stitch. So that would count as 1 double crochet stitch. So if you look at my circle, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I have 10 of these going all the way around my circle. So once you have this and you feel confident, which I hope you do, you're going to do 1 slip stitch in the first chain stitch. So that means you're going to find the top stitch of this little wreath we have here. So if you look at the sides, these little V's are all stitches. So since our hook is up here, we want to find the first V we have. That first V would be this guy right here. We're going to stick our yarn into that stitch. We're going to put our yarn over our hook, and we're just going to pull the 2 loops we have on our hook over that yarn we put on our hook, and we just made a slip stitch, which is what we used earlier to create our circle initially. And this is how we move on to making our heart around this wreath. So now we're going to chain 3. So yarn over hook, loop over, wrap the yarn around the hook, loop over, and wrap the yarn around the hook, loop over. So we have 1, 2, 3. 3 chains. Now, in the same stitch that we just made our slip stitch, you'll be able to see it. It should be a hole, but if you look closely too, you can see that you put yarn through that. So the stitch that you put yarn through is a stitch we're going to continue to put our hook through. So we're going to do what's called a triple crochet, which is where we wrap our yarn around our hook twice. So 1, 2, oops, 1, 2, and then we find that stitch that we just put our hook through, and we stick our hook through that hole. So you should have 1, 2, 3, 4 loops on your hook. This is called a triple crochet because it's going to take us 3 times wrapping the yarn around our hook to get all these loops off of our hook. So we wrap our yarn around the hook and we get rid of 2 of these loops. And now we have 3 loops on our hook. So again, we wrap our yarn around our hook and we get rid of the next 2 loops on our hook. And now we're left with 2 loops on our hook. We wrap our yarn around our hook again and get rid of the last 2 loops. And that is our very first triple crochet. Not too bad. Seems daunting, but once you do it a few times, it's not bad, I promise. We're going to do that 2 more times in the same stitch. So again, wrap our yarn around our hook twice. Find that same stitch you just put the hook through. Push the hook through. And again, you should have 4 loops around your hook. Wrap the yarn around your hook. And we're going to get rid of the first 2 loops. And we're left with 3 loops on our hook. And again, wrap the yarn around the hook, get rid of the next 2 loops, wrap the yarn around the hook again, and get rid of the last 2 loops. And then do that for a 3rd time. Sometimes it's hard to grab 2 loops at once, so you can grab them individually. You just got to keep count. No problem with that. And there we go. Now we can move on. Now we want to find our next stitch. And again, the stitches are going to look like V's. So if you see your next V, which it'll look like this guy right here, this is the stitch we're going to use for our next stitches. So again, we're going to do more triple crochets. So now we're doing 3 triple crochets again in this stitch I just pointed out to you guys. So again, wrap the yarn over our hook twice and push it through this stitch, and you'll have the 4 loops on your hook. Just want to grab myself more yarn here. Okay. Don't get confused. This might look like 5 loops. It's not. Remember, the stitch you just put the hook through is a V, so that is considered 1 loop. So again, loop the yarn over the hook and get rid of the first 2 loops you have on your hook. So you're left with 3. Wrap the yarn around your hook again. Get rid of the next 2 loops. Wrap your yarn around your hook for a 3rd time and get rid of the last 2 loops. And now you're going to do this 2 more times in that same stitch, which will now be a noticeable hole, which makes it a bit easier. So wrap the yarn around 2 times into the same stitch. Get rid of the first 2 loops. Whoops. Again, mistakes can be made, but they can also be fixed. Get rid of the next 2 loops. And get rid of the last 2 loops. And then 1 more time in this stitch. Okay, awesome. All right, we're getting there, guys. All right, so in the next stitch, and again, that next stitch is going to be the next V you see on your wreath or ring, whatever you want to call it. So in this stitch, we're going to do a double crochet, which we did to make our ring in the beginning. So wrap the yarn around our hook just once, put it into that V, and we have the 3 loops on our hook. So we wrap our yarn around our hook, get rid of those first 2 loops, put our yarn around our hook again, and get rid of those last 2 loops. Perfect. And now in this same stitch, which again will be noticeable now, it should be a little hole, you're going to do a half double crochet, which is the same premise, just a minor difference. So yarn over hook, only once, put it in that little hole, the same stitch you just used, and you're going to put the yarn over your hook, and you're going to put only the first loop you have over that yarn. This is why it's called half. Instead of doing the 2, you do only 1, and then when you put the yarn over your hook the second time, now you pull all 3 of the loops over your hook. And that is a half double crochet. So now we move on to our next stitch. So we find the next V, and we're going to do a single crochet, which is super easy. We do not have to loop our yarn over the hook at all. We just put our yarn through this stitch, and then we hook our yarn over, and then we pull, sorry guys, we pull the 2 loops over our hook, and that is a single crochet. And then we look for our next V, which, be careful, because sometimes the stitches you first go into can still look like V's, but you'll know if you just use them if you have your working yarn inside that stitch. So we want to move on to the next stitch. So I'll move on to the next V, and again I'll put my yarn through that V because we're doing another single crochet, and I'll wrap my yarn around my hook, and I'll pull both of those loops through. Perfect. Now we're going to move on to our next hook, our next V, which would be this guy right here, and we're going to do another single crochet. So again, yarn over hook, pull those 2 loops through, and now keep track of this one. Make sure the hole is noticeable because we're still going to work with this stitch. And now we're going to do a double crochet in this stitch. So now wrap the yarn around your hook and push the hook through that stitch you're working in. You should have the 3 loops on your hook. And this is a double crochet, so we'll wrap the yarn around our hook and get rid of the first 2 loops, and we're left with 2. And then we wrap our yarn around our hook again and get rid of the last 2 loops, and that completes our double crochet. Then in that same stitch, which you can still see the hole slightly for, we're going to do another single crochet. So we'll just put our hook right through, we'll have the 2 loops, and we'll wrap our yarn around our hook, and then we'll pull our 2 loops through, and there we go. That's going to be the bottom of our heart. So now, right now, we have 1/2 of our heart, very cute, and the next half will go by fast, I promise. we're going to find our next V, which would be this guy right here. And we're going to do a single crochet, another easy one. So we push our hook through that first V, wrap our yarn around our hook, and we get rid of those 2 loops. Just need some more yarn. Okay. And then we want to find our next V, which would be this guy right here, because this V is part of the stitch we just did. So we push our hook through this V right here and do another single crochet. And pull our hook through the 2 loops. Awesome. Now we're going to go to the next stitch. So the next V, which would be this guy right here, and we do a half double crochet. So we wrap our yarn around our hook, push it through that V, and we'll do again a half double crochet. So yarn over hook, only the first loop goes over, yarn over hook again, and now all 3 go over. And now in that same stitch, we're going to do a double crochet. So yarn over hook. You can, again, it'll be a noticeable hole, the stitch you just worked into. So put that hook through and do a double crochet. So yarn over hook. And the first 2 loops you want to pull through. And then yarn over hook again. And the last 2 loops you want to pull through. And now we finished that. Now you want to find your next stitch, which again isn't the one you worked in, but the next V in your ring. And we're going to do 3 triple crochets again to make that top of our heart. So we wrap the yarn around twice and push our hook through that stitch. And this is a triple crochet, so we're going to wrap the yarn around our hook and get rid of the first 2 loops on our hook. Now we're left with 3. We want to wrap the yarn around hook again, get rid of the next 2 loops, wrap the yarn around our hook again, and get rid of the last 2 loops. And now we're going to do that 2 more times in the same stitch, which you will see, again, it'll be the noticeable hole right there. So 1, 2, into that same stitch, yarn over hook, get rid of the first 2 loops, yarn over hook again, get rid of the last 2 loops, well, middle 2 loops, yarn over hook a final time, and get rid of the last 2 loops. And then 1 more time, so yarn over twice in that same stitch, yarn over hook, get rid of the first 2 loops, yarn over hook again, get rid of the second 2 loops, and yarn over hook a 3rd time, get rid of the last 2 loops. Perfect. So now we can move on and do the same thing in the next V. So we find the next stitch, which is this guy right here. It's right next to the stitch you were just working in. And that's where you're going to put 3 more triple crochets. So again, yarn over hook twice. And we'll go into that V right there. Yarn over hook only once. Get rid of the first 2 loops. Yarn over, hook again. Get rid of the second 2 loops. Yarn over, hook a 3rd time. And get rid of the last 2 loops. Okay. Only 2 more times. Yarn over, hook twice. Again, that stitch will be noticeable into that same stitch. Yarn over, hook only once. I know it's kind of hard to see there. Get rid of the first 2 loops on that hook. Yarn over, hook again. Get rid of the next 2 loops. Yarn over, hook a 3rd time. Get rid of those. And 1 more time. It gets a little harder sometimes, especially the tighter you make the heart. Again, I said before, I tend to crochet kind of tightly, and it makes it harder to grab both loops at one time. But again, grab one at a time, perfectly fine. Whatever works best for you. Okay. Now, in that same stitch, which will still be pretty noticeable, it'll be a little hole right there, we want to do a double crochet. So we wrap our yarn around only once, find that stitch you're just working in, which is right there, push our hook in, wrap our yarn around our hook, only once, and then get rid of the first 2 loops on our hook, and then wrap the yarn around our hook, and get rid of the next 2 loops. And we're almost done. You're going to do a slip stitch in one of the first stitches we started in. So I usually go find one of the stitches in between the heart here. So I usually go into this very middle stitch right here. You can kind of see it. It separates the 2 tops of the hearts. And I'll just push my hook in. I will wrap my yarn around once. And I will push both of those loops through that. And voila! We have made a little heart. And again, they look different. They look different from the ones I made. It looks different from the ones I made earlier. It all depends, but it does not matter. So now that you have that, I usually keep my crochet hook in my heart just so I don't lose that stitch, because if you take out your crochet hook too early and this gets loose, it can unravel what we just did. So I will now take the scissors and I will cut off this working yarn. I'll cut it to about there. Doesn't have to be super long. And then I will also take this non-working end and also cut that short. This is where I'll take our crochet needle. And what I will do, let's see. I'll take the yarn, and sometimes it's easier if you fold it to get it through the little hole of the crochet needle. Sometimes. And I'll pull that yarn through that needle. And before I take my crochet hook out, what I'll do is I will fish my needle through this stitch, so that way my work doesn't unravel here. So I pulled that through. I can now take my crochet hook out. I usually tighten it a bit because it'll make it look more like a heart. If you tighten up the top, it'll kind of separate the two, I guess you could call them ears here, make it look more heart-shaped. And then you're just going to ravel the yarn into the heart. Doesn't matter where, it can be wherever. So I'll usually go in the first couple stitches. Again, doesn't matter. I'll fish it through there, and I'll fish it through here. And you only have to do this twice. And you can take your yarn needle out, you can pull it tight. And then you can cut this really short, so that way it's not noticeable anymore. And then you do the same thing with this working end. So, again, we get that through the eye of the needle here. And again, doesn't matter what stitches it goes through, whatever's close by, and it only has to go in a couple. I cut this kind of short, so I don't think I'll put it in another, but that should hold. And you just cut that off. And hooray! We have a heart! And it's super cute. Adorable. So yeah, they're super cute. I hope you guys understood that. Tell me if there's anything I can improve on to make that easier to understand. I would have loved to have done this in person, but unfortunately we have to work with what we're dealt with right now. But again, let me know if there's any way I can improve, and I hope you guys had fun. Thank you so much.